It's been called mommy porn, literary trash, and a field guide to sexual dysfunction. To this, no fewer than 65 million readers have responded, "Shh, I'm reading." The road to such Harry Potter-esque sales figures began when Britain's Erica Leonard began posting erotic, sadomasochistic stories featuring characters from Stephenie Meyer's Twilight on a fan fiction website. As thousands of virtual pulses quickened, the work was reshaped as 50 Shades of Grey. Meanwhile, its red-hot online sales confirm the internet as the plain brown wrapper of the 21st century. Coming up, we'll try to find black and white insights twixt those 50 shades and discover what exactly this literary freak of nature says about 21st century sexuality. This is Context, a look at life beyond the headlines.
Our first guest on the phenomena of 50 Shades is sex educator Kim Sedgwick, who is the co-founder of the Red Tent Sisters, a store in Toronto geared towards women's sexual and reproductive health. Please welcome Kim to Context. Kim Sedgwick. Thank you. Thank you so much. You, as sisters, had trouble deciding what to do with 50 Shades.
We did indeed. There was quite the conversation about it for a few reasons. One, our father was in publishing, and I did an English degree, and then let's face it, the writing in 50 Shades of Grey leaves a little bit to be desired. So certainly there was that element. And also we had some concerns about the depiction of the relationship and how it conveys BDSM culture. And so that was something that we certainly had to talk about and decide whether it was appropriate for our store.
It's incredible. It's outsold Harry Potter on Amazon. 65 million copies.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Let's do a sample of reviews here. Toronto Star. It is for those who would rather read about bondage than allow themselves to be bound and put under a lover's control. Chatelaine. The real torture in this book is to take it in your hands and read it. Claire Phillipson of the United Kingdom's Wearside Women in Need, this is a shelter, women's shelter network, says, "We will be cutting them up, using them for toilet roll and sticking them on our compost heap, and they'll go back in the ground, although the ideas they represent will continue." Yet it is women buying this in unprecedented numbers.
Yep.
Why?
Well, I think there's a few things to keep in mind. One is that it's fiction, right? It's fantasy. There's a reason why women are wanting to read this, is that it offers an escape in the same way that other fantasy books are doing really well, like the Twilight books, Harry Potter, all these things are fantasy, right? And I think that is one of the concerns I had about the book, is that some people are mixing fantasy and fiction with reality. So these are not things that one should be doing in real life without reading a lot about it and really understanding it. And that's sort of where my store came in, is people coming in and saying, "Oh, I want to try these things," and me going, "Okay, wait a second, we need to have a conversation about that."
My concern was a 21-year-old virgin and the fantasy of meeting a millionaire, handsome, gorgeous, sweeping her off her feet, but she's signing a contract to be sexually submissive to him. And by the end of the third, they're married with a baby, and it's every girl's dream. That is still what we as women dream about, is getting married, being moms. And it just doesn't work. Like you say, it's fiction. Yeah. And you think that that line is being crossed a bit?
I do, for sure, because people would come in and say, "Oh, I want to play out, chapter 5 or whatever," and I'm going, no, this is not a how-to book. There's a lot that's left out of the book. If this is something someone wants to try, there are other resources that would be much better for it.
Okay, speaking of wants to try, earlier we spoke with Marion Gertz. She's a registered sex therapist in Toronto, and here's what she had to say.
Do you know, it's phenomenal, the popularity of this book. And one side of me says, isn't it great that people are reading, they're understanding more about their sexuality? And then another part of me says, well, there are lots of sources for good sex education. And is this a series that is allowing women to feel empowered, to feel engaged, to feel celebratory regarding their sexuality? Maybe that's another question.
Kim, is that happening? Is that the kind of questions women are asking?
Well, women are coming in, and I think a lot of them do feel like they're empowered, that they're being able to have conversations they wouldn't have otherwise. In particular, I think the fact that it's become a book club pick, so women are reading it with other women, and those are the kinds of conversations that they're having. Now, that said, there's other women who have a very different reaction, who read it and are very concerned by it. Yeah.
Could 50 Shades present a danger to healthy couples?
I think it could represent a danger if they're not on the same page about what they would like to try. So if one person really wants to try something and the other person doesn't. And I think that really comes down to communication, which is something that's important, of course, in all kinds of relationships.
Okay, let's hear from Marian Gertz again on that very subject. Marian.
I don't think, we don't want to give it too much credit. I think healthy couples will, if they choose to have a look at this material, will know going in where they already stand in terms of honoring each other, the kinds of sexual activity that they enjoy. What 50 Shades will simply do will be to provide another piece of information, another perspective, another way of approaching a relationship that may or may not fit them. And I think most knowledgeable, astute, sophisticated couples are going to do a little bit of research before they actually purchase the book and start reading it. Time is valuable. Are they going to want to invest time and energy, money, into reading material that may or may not be in keeping with how their worldview, for instance?
So Kim, as we looked at this here at Context, I wondered, is the message that's become so popular with this book being such a big seller, is it about freedom or is it about bondage?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I think people who are in the community, people who actually practice what is depicted in this book, would say that you can only really engage in bondage if you're free to begin with. You have to have an equal partnership, that you have to have equality between both people in order to willingly give it up. So I would say it's really about freedom. My concern is maybe the book doesn't necessarily reflect that.
So when we get a women's shelter saying, burn it, cut it up into toilet paper, they're saying it's not giving women a message of freedom. What do you say about the concern of those kind of feminist organizations?
Yeah, I can certainly see where they're coming from. As I said, I had similar concerns myself. And I think, as I said, it really comes down to separating fiction from reality. And then unfortunately, they're often conflated together.
So what do we learn about the phenomenon of the book? What can we learn from that it's become what it has?
So a few things. I think one is they were talking about, the online sales. I think that's huge. The fact that you could order it online, have it delivered, or that not even that you have a physical.
Nobody knows what you're reading.
No one knows what you're reading, and maybe you don't even have a physical copy. You have it on your Kindle. No one can see what you're reading. And then it got so popular, and it was talked about in all those magazines that you mentioned. That I think the shame element and that normally accompanies other erotica, that women suddenly were thinking, well, if it's being talked about in all these credible sources, it's okay for me to read it in a way that it isn't with other books. And so now I go on the subway and I see women openly holding it up the way that I don't think they would with other books.
Okay. Kim Sedgwick with the Red Tent Sisters, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is erotic literature a healthy escape? Yes or no? Join the conversation. Send your answers by phone, email, Facebook, or Twitter. And our studio audience is taking a live vote, and we'll have those results in a moment. Well, if 50 Shades of Grey is sparking sexual fantasy, our next guest says nurture those thoughts so you can determine if God is speaking to you through them. Author Shannon Ethridge is coming up next. Yeah, you'll have to take